What's happening? Benton here. We are live. Are some truckers getting woke up? I don't know. Maybe they should get some earplugs. About to roll out of the truck stop here. But first, another cup of coffee. Shout out to Music Holds the Secret, who said, "Good morning, all Bentonians and Bentonites." Well, so now here in the truck, one of the first things I discovered, although unfortunately did not discover before I left the, for my first trip, is that the front curtains, they don't, the grommets have broken, so the curtains won't stay in the track. Unfortunately, my whole front glass is exposed, which wasn't such a big deal since I could close the sleeper curtains. Of course, that's assuming that the air conditioner in the sleeper works, which now it's stopped working. I monkeyed around and checked all the fuses yesterday. Not a fuse, probably a relay, who knows? Hard to say. I'm not a mechanic. Bear with me while I poorly multitask here. Multitask poorly. Maybe I should turn on the camera. What is it, Sunday morning? I guess Z's going live here shortly. What's up, Rob? Good to see ya. I've gotten lazy in this time around. I've got that fancy cell phone mount, portable camera rig deal, and too lazy to drag it out of the backpack, I guess. Let's see, what can we prop this up on? Maybe that'll work, I don't know. Yeah, what's happening indeed. Oh, man. Popo's here. I don't know what's going on. Ain't no telling. Where am I? Effingham, Illinois. Never a dull moment. There's always something to be done. Is your life like that? There's always something to do. Strange characters moving about. There's no truck stops anywhere near the delivery, so looks like I'll be stopping at a rest area about 60 miles short of the delivery up in Wisconsin. Four more days. What's that mean, Austin Murphy? Hey, what's up, Lou? Trying to roll out of the truck stop here. Gotten to where I can't really use just the regular bathroom at these truck stops. There's always some weirdo in there, heavy breathing, talking on their phone or something. So I went across the street to the Pilot where I get free showers. So while I was in there to use the toilet, but then while I was in there, I said, "Well, shit, I might as well take a shower." So now I'm behind schedule. Not that it really matters. My self-imposed schedule, with the live stream anyway. Got to get in before Z, which not really. Don't really have to. Yeah, exactly. My skin biome. Yeah, I really don't. I shower. The over under on Benton number of Benton showers in a month is 3.5, and usually it's only when I cut my hair and cut my scruff off because then it gets on my shoulders, and it starts itching if I don't take a shower. Certainly not good for the foot fungus. I can tell you that. Yeah, foot fungus is not a fan. It takes so long. I'm not going to sit in there for 15 minutes waiting for my feet to fully dry. I should take my socks off. Sometimes when people don't believe me that I'm homeless or used to be homeless, I'll say, well, I can take off my shoes and socks and show you my toes, my toenails. I got the toenails of a homeless man. Now I'm wondering when this truck's going to end up going in the shop. I'm in generally the Midwest and the Southeast. Supposedly we run down to Laredo, Texas a lot with this company, but I haven't had to go down, or I haven't gotten to go down there yet. Laredo, Laredo to Wisconsin or somewhere like that would be a nice run. But like most of these smaller companies, the guys who've been here a long time, the drivers who've been around for a while with the company, they end up grabbing all the best stuff, I'm assuming, for the dedicated freight. And then I just get the leftovers, or they grab me something last minute through some broker. Where the fuck? One thing about living in this truck, I lose everything. Everything gets lost on a daily basis. Oh, there it is. All right. Yeah, I would imagine there's all kind of things to do for the foot fungus. At least to my problems. Although generally, from what I understand, that would need to be combined with a new pair of shoes and probably new socks as well. That would be my understanding. Maybe if I remember next time I get a new pair of shoes, if I feel like buying all new socks, maybe I'll do that. Garlic, liquid garlic works quite well, but it doesn't kill it entirely. Honestly, it doesn't really matter at this point. It's not like anybody's looking at my feet. There you go, Earl. Yeah, throwing down the gauntlet. Yeah. I'm starting to realize, and I like my computer that I got recently, but I probably needed a laptop because I never use the computer here in the truck because it just takes too long to drag all the parts out of the backpack and assemble everything. It just takes too long. So I end up just going with the phone. Yeah, not on my toes it doesn't, but it's like a tincture, garlic tincture. Yeah, I was chewing raw garlic for a while, but man, it would really burn up the inside of my mouth, and like it took like a week to go back to normal. I cook it, I have it in my food, but that's cooked, so I think it takes a lot of the maybe it takes a lot of the potency away. Lou's Italian, right? We can ask him about garlic, I suppose. Maybe I'll just start doing the Z pre-show. The Tedic Warrior pre-show. If we were in the same time zone, that would probably work. It's 4:30 my time, so if he was going live 6 a.m. my time, that would work out perfect. I believe he's on Eastern. Well, that's true, but I need the antibiotic. I'm still fighting off the. Is it going to rain? Still fighting off the bioweapon attack. I got hit hard with the Delta, whatever that was. That's been 2 years ago now. Still feeling the effects. I've noticed my sense of smell has improved since I started eating a lot of garlic. Maybe it's killing that spike protein or whatever the hell it is. I don't know. Yeah, depending on what source you go to, garlic is either like the healthiest thing possible or it's like literal poison. Have y'all ever noticed that? Well, I think I rushed the pour over here, but oh well, it'll be all right. Well, thanks for bearing with the slow part of the stream. I think it'll pick up once I get in the driver's seat. I'm sure I've got many topics to ramble on. I know I do. Loaded for bear today. My fingertips are destroyed. Look at this. Can't really tell, but yeah. Not good. Let's go up. Got to certify to the government that the equipment is safe. Give me a second. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Will I be able to see the live chat today? That's the question. Let's see. Hey, two Bentons. Huh. No, nowhere near me, hopefully. Yeah, that's right. The Unabomber passed. He's old as fuck though. He was born in like 46. I want to say. I think that's right. Yeah, rest in peace, Mr. Kaczynski. Good question. Well, I mean, there are autonomous trucks already. So I don't know. Good question. Yeah, shout out to Teddy K. Check something real quick before we roll out here. Yeah, we're good. Wait, no, we're not. Probably ought to get the GPS gun going. Too much technology. I guess it ties in with Ted's death, right? All this technology. I'm only driving 6 hours today, and I'm going to be in the truck for the hottest part of the day. Yeah, oh well. Oh well. No, it's going to have to go into the shop. I think it's probably a relay, but I'm not a mechanic. Good to see you, Gary. I checked all the fuses yesterday. It's not a fuse, so probably a relay, but you never know. But I still have the front AC, but the main problem is I don't have front curtains. So I can either be hot with the sleeper curtains closed where nobody can see me, or I can have the curtains open and then, especially in the dark with the lights on, it's just everybody can see what I'm doing, which I'm not a fan of. I don't know. Maybe they'll switch me into a different truck. I really don't know. Let's see. Hard to say with these trucking companies. If everything's fine while I'm driving. It's when I'm done for the day. That's when the problem comes in. It's always something though in truck driving. I'm sure Music Holds a Secret can tell you that. It's always something. So rare times when just everything's firing on all cylinders, as it were. Shout out to Slow Boy Whiteboard in the house. Shout out to the chat. Oh, and the check engine light's on, which may or may not mean something, but like we might be down a little bit of power, possibly. Although I have not pulled a heavy load in a while. So maybe I'm used to lighter loads. Certainly seems to be taking a little longer to get up to speed than normal. 41K in the box. Where are we going? 57 north. Get up to speed so I can pontificate. What's up, Yellow Cake Maker? Yeah, there you go. Protect the loads, yeah. Yeah. Hypothetically, the autonomous truck doesn't need to stop, though. Well, the charging, I guess, is the major issue. I think that's going to end up being battery swaps if they ever. I'm not even convinced they're really going to be able to replace long haul with electric, but certainly self-driving diesel fuel would be an option. Yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know. see. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I love empty roads as well. Yeah, been doing way too much daytime driving with traffic lately. That's for sure. I'll tell you this: there's way more self-driving trucks already than people realize. Like in fact, UPS and I believe I don't know if it's the Postal Service directly, but I know UPS started running autonomous trucks out west like over 5 years ago now. It's pre fake pandemic. You know, they just call it testing, but well, they're testing it by taking loads from point A to point B. So it's like, oh, we're testing a program to spray the skies. Well, okay, that sounds like spraying the skies to me. JG's demons are putting out wildfires. I guess JG is I guess he's a fan of Drew now. Is that, I know initially he was wanting to do, you know, he was wanting to maim Drew and break his legs or whatever. And the last time I heard JG, he was seemed to be getting along with Drew. I heard he was working. JG found a job apparently, and him and RT were going at it. I guess that was on a couple of different streams. Yeah, I guess you know Kaczynski passing is more or less a nothing burger, I suppose. I mean overall, but it's kind of interesting to think about that psyop and you know revisit that character a bit. Z live yet? Let me know when Z goes live if you would please. Much appreciated. Damn, I thought I had things to say. Maybe I don't. Yeah, I think that's probably the most logical, most what Occam's razor or whatever. Yeah, character. Well, maybe it's going to rain on us all day. Yeah, yeah. Got some ideas in my head about that, but no, they're not wanting to come out just yet. I watched a documentary, or I listened to a documentary this morning while I was doing my morning routine. It was about West Side Barbell, these power lifters. This guy, Louis Simmons, if anybody's familiar with any of that stuff. Pretty interesting. Yeah, we're not following big rigs. We're not following big rigs in the rain. See, these people are nuts, man. Completely nuts. Totally fucking nuts. Look at them. That person rolled right up to my back door and then just tried to stay there. And look, they'll go right back to going 80. Slowed down to 45, put the flashers on, they still stayed back there. Had to pull onto the shoulder to get them to go around me. They're gone, man. They're never coming back. They've left the building. Elvis has left the building. The normies have left the building. They're never to return. You nothing can be done with somebody who's in whatever space that is psychologically. And I don't know what it is about me, if it's the gang stalking, the spiritual gang stalking or what, but it seems like cars try to follow me to a much greater extent than some of these other trucks. I had one yesterday, slowed down on purpose to get me to pass them, and then tried to follow me. Didn't matter how much I slowed down, they weren't gonna give it up. So had to do the same thing, hit the shoulder to get them to go around me. It's bizarre, man. Totally fucking bizarre. Yeah. Well, by the way, these are the NPCs that, because a human being has a hope station, these are the human beings that I have to continuously, people try to speak as if these are the people who are waking up. I'm like, no, waking up's not a thing. Sorry, that's not a thing that happens. And this idea of all these NPCs, returning into their, somehow regaining conscious awareness of the world around them, that's never going to happen. Not in mass. Literally impossible. So I'm not willing to entertain these nonsense notions of these kumbaya moments where everybody comes together and fixes the dystopia. Not gonna happen. They gone. See, and this is, by the way, I'm not picking on you, maskless, faceless, but this is our brains. See, when we see people behaving in this way, and my brain does this also, we look for the valid reasons that could possibly explain their behavior. But this is a mistake, by the way. It's a mistake to think that way, in my view. Because really, there's no justification for that, for doing that. And if you observe people's driving, almost nobody's driving for fuel efficiency. And see, now that I've forced them to pass me, they went right back. They were literally going 80, caught up to me, slowed down, and tried to just stay behind me. And then as I slowed all the way down to 45 and put the flashers on, they still tried to stay behind me. I went onto the shoulder, and then after a moment of confusion, they went around me and then went right back to going 80. Well, if they're trying to get fuel economy, they're not driving that way in the first place. And in fact, if somebody wanted to save gas, the number one way to do that would be not to travel on the interstate at all. Because most likely there are U.S. highways that one could take and maintain lower speeds and use less fuel. But, But again, I understand this is how our brains work. When we see people doing any behavior, we immediately look for the valid reasons why they're behaving that way instead of realizing, oh, these people are nuts. They're really actually just crazy. They're de facto insane, and there's no logical explanation for what they're doing. Most of them. Like yesterday, I looked over and there's some guy. He was some guy in a pickup truck from Texas. So he was in the process of passing me, but I guess he got so engrossed in his TikTok or whatever he was looking at on his phone, looking at his screen and giggling at his feed, that he. And by the way, I've said before that human consciousness cannot yet occupy the physical space and the cyberspace simultaneously. So I guess he was in the physical space. His consciousness was in his body as he's passing me. And then right when he gets door to door with me, front door to front door, he goes off into cyberspace. And I look over and he's just right there beside me. And so then I hit the air horn, and finally he wakes up and starts passing me again. And of course, he's just got his phone, got his head cocked and got his phone up, doing God knows what. It's a wrap, man. These people, they're done. You can't. There's no reformation. And by the way, rest in peace, Mr. Kaczynski. That's the only, and it's not even a solution. But until you get these phones out of these people's hands permanently, nothing can be done. There's 0% chance of anything other than a regression in humanity across time, as long as they've got these phones in their hands. Take the phones away, and maybe the regression could be arrested enough to then, hit a point of to stop the regression, and then maybe plateau out and then start to go back up. Maybe no chance as long as these people got a phone in their hand. None. It's too powerful. Oh, really just need a mass famine. And see, I was involved in some of this hysteria around food shortages, but I was actually going through that back during the 08-09 crisis, because Alex Jones was pushing those narratives very hard about these food shortages. And I've come to realize we're not going to have food shortages in the U.S. because the best thing for this country, in my view, would be to starve everybody out long enough that about 75% of these people would just go away, and then only leave the strong 25%. Because if you look at who are the countries that supposedly are strong now? It's China and Russia, right? Well, that supposedly, according to the official fiction, those are two countries that have had. And I don't want to hear about the Depression. I know some people starved to death. That wasn't a mass famine. I'm talking about a protracted, mass famine. Tens of millions of people starving to death. Supposedly China and Russia have both experienced some version of that. All that does is and America has not had that, which leads me to believe that it's not going to happen. Americans will be able to get all the calories they need to be some of the least healthy people on the earth, perhaps the least healthy populace on the earth, or in the realm, whatever we're calling it nowadays. I mean, does it even really matter at this point? Oh, I know, we're good, masses faceless. I just, I'm already pre-annoyed, so it's good for my energy. I was having trouble gathering the energetic resources to do the broadcast, so sometimes a statement like that can help get me going. And the reality is, most people don't have the driving skill to draft close enough to the trailer of a big rig to even really make a difference. I did it one time driving from Florida to Arkansas in my Nissan Maxima, and it made a huge difference. I stayed on this guy's tail for like 5 straight hours, truck driver. But it takes a lot of driving skill to be able to do that without crashing. That's how desperate I was. And that's one of the first times the gas got real expensive, and I was pretty broke. So doubling my fuel economy or whatever it was made a big difference. What's up, Capricorny? Good to see you. Well, yeah, and this Lou Bass talking about the civil society. But what we have now, is this. People have these deep-seated emotional problems and psychological problems, and rampant mental illness and all the stresses and pressures people are under. Which really that ties into the theme of the throwing down the gauntlet, which to me is always a competitive thing. Because not that I was inspired by it, but that West Side Barbell documentary kind of reminded me that, I've been in that same mental space a lot of just pushing myself towards some kind of, achievement in my own life. And for these guys, it was, powerlifting and, overcoming these obstacles and also in an environment where, as soon as you had guys who were had world records in these various, powerlifting disciplines, in their weight class, but as soon as it became apparent that they would never be able to, continue to achieve, nobody really wanted anything to do with them anymore, especially the guy Louis Simmons that sort of started the whole thing. He was, and that's kind of how it's supposed to be, I think, especially for men, although probably, women can respond to that. They had some women powerlifters also, but, that's certainly more of a male mindset. And I myself, I have to have, or I don't have to, but, I function best when I have some sort of competitive endeavor, which in the last 15 years or so has mostly been me competing with myself, in all of these various spiritual practices. And then more and more it becomes almost like a Zen Buddhist type of deal which seems ridiculous because, I'm triggered. I get triggered, I get agitated, I get cranky and all of these things. But, what better setting than, this modern realm, this beast system, modern America. Because if you look at these, Eastern countries, these Buddhist monks, right? Well, I mean, what's more difficult, being born, into an Eastern, being born in Vietnam or Laos or somewhere, or Tibet, into a culture and a religion of, of monks and meditation and all of these things. And then, a lot of those, looks like we got humans in the roadway up here, potentially. Of course, these bozos are going to take right off and just get right behind me. That always happens. Maybe not. Yeah, here they come. That's another thing with the gang stalking. The frequent, if I pass a stopped vehicle on the shoulder, the frequency at which they take off right after I pass it's got to be way higher than what should be mathematically possible. Probably those bozos that were trying to follow me before. I mean, I've had numerous incidents on stream of literal gang stalking. It's probably just one of that. It's probably just another example of gang stalking. Because they really, realistically, they based on their speed, they should be passing me right about now. Let's see if they're actually going to do it. No, they're just going to follow me. No, I hear they're actually going to pass. Amazing. Maybe they're actually real people. Might just be, every once in a while, it's just a regular person doing regular people things. Minnesota plates, by the way. So, growing up, going into a monastery at the age of 6 and, being in a 6-year-old, being able to get into the lotus position and all of these things, the Zen masters and all this, at the, what do they call this? The abbots and all of this. What I'm trying to think of, there's some kind of Asian name for in India it's an ashram, but whatever we're talking about. Or is it, to grow up and have a psychology formed in the Western world, and be a Westerner, especially an American, in 2023, being, my age or whatever age you folks are, and then to go from that to some sort of, some level, some measure of so-called enlightenment or, mastery of one's emotions, being able to deal with things without becoming, while still being triggered some of the time, dealing with those things more effectively. Am I making any sense? Good to see you, London man. I don't know if I'm quite verbalizing what I'm trying to say or not. CO2 might be a hoax cause that something is happening. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is just the beginning. I agree. The technological merge. But I guess that's what I mean by throwing down the gauntlet is that, and I've talked about the David Goggins idea that motivation is crap, all this inspirational BS. And then you get into the toxic positivity where, I don't even want to talk to people half the time in the real world because, I might accidentally say something bordering on the negative, and then it's and my mom has gotten really bad about this constant need to always look on the bright side of things, which it becomes a pathology in my view, and that's like the opposite of the the enlightenment or the, especially in the truth community, just realizing that many aspects of the current reality are indeed horrible, and to do anything less than fully accept the suck, right? That's toxic positivity. That's repression. It's ignoring reality is not positivity. To be able to detachedly, just experience all these horrific, nightmarish social problems and economic woes. Credits with respect to food production, but then, well, how do you reconcile that with supposedly the same system claims that up to 40% of all the food is never even consumed and ends up in the landfill? So it's like, well, if okay, let's take the narrative that even if the carbon and the CO2 is a thing, so if that's true and food production has a lot to do with that, then how about, how about figure out a way not to waste 40% of the food supply, thus, not needing to produce as much food, right? Which obviously none of this is based on logic or what's rational or sensible, or little to nothing. And then, the disorientation that goes along with, in the moment being comfortable with these ideas of just how absurd, these various aspects of the nightmare dystopia are. What better way to spiritually progress and, reach some level of being able to maintain a meditative state in the moment, moment to moment, in the, dare I say, Jack Talcottian, live without fear model, right? Well, how about live without repression? Fear, I can use fear. I can use fear. When I talk about motivation as crap, well, I can certainly use fear as a motivator. I've used anger very effectively as a motivator in the past. Motivate myself. And then all these people, who, are so above it all, especially in these so-called truth communities, and some people just, they're like allergic to any form of earnestness, right? Just somebody like me who I'll talk about, going to war with myself. And that's been something of a controversial topic, because I know Drew had said something in that vein, and then Paul was pushing back. And then we get into the confusion, the inherent confusion of the English language, and what exactly do I mean? But to me, that's basically, if I'm talking about going to war with myself, it's detecting all those parts of me that are less than desirable, and that represent a weakness, and that I will, root out, I will remove by the root, and have done in the past. What is that going to be? And only so, and I think necessarily an individual who's, applied that process over and over and over again, such as myself, all that's really left to wage war upon is the things that are left over that I do probably prefer on some level, just based on my own nature. So, this morning, waking up at like 1 a.m., and my preference would be to immediately spring into action, get my day started. But that's not what needs to be done. See, that's me reverting to, my own preference versus, well, now the war is, can I just make myself lay here and rest for 2 hours, knowing I'm not going to go back to sleep? And if I do go back to sleep, that's probably the worst thing for me, because then I'm going to be groggy. But then it's almost like a practice of, if I become annoyed, then obviously I'm not going to be able to rest. So can I just lay here, observe my body in a restful state, maintain whatever my mental state needs to be, in a meditative, detached fashion, let the body heal, let the body rest, because I am dealing with, serious fucking chronic illness here. And I am engaged in a long-haul truck driving, which is an endurance sport to some extent. Musical's the secret can tell you that, I'm sure. And, thankfully, and here's how, I talk about I've been guided and protected spiritually, and I believe in, and again, we're using the English language to, we're using certain, we're using symbols, a symbolic language that's already fraught with peril, but, what I would term to be guardian angels, and I know I've been protected my whole life on some level. So now I'm back to work, but my last company was really all the time pushing me to, drive all these miles. And I respond to being driven in that way. I respond to some people, you can put your foot in their ass and it drives them and motivates them. I'm one of those people. And to this job where so far they don't really seem to give a shit if I just, you know, work every day and don't really try to kill myself. Especially now that I'm not paying, in the short term, I'm not paying the taxes. So I'm actually making the same amount of money for less. I mean, in the short term, I'm making the same amount of money for less work, right? Although the tax issues will have to be resolved, in the longer term. But I'm not the type to let those problems fester. So at some point, I'm sure I will be. As much as I don't want to, I'll be contacting the IRS. I'm sure they'll be happy to take my money. I'm not going to be filing though. If they're willing to incarcerate me over not filing a tax return, so be it. But I'm not dumb enough to go to prison for not paying them money, which I still think is very unlikely, but apparently could happen. Because I know if I get put on a payment plan where they start garnishing my wages, I'll just lose all interest in working. Because I know myself. And I know how to live outside with nothing. And in fact, the main reason I haven't even gone back to that lifestyle is that with my health woes, I need to be able to, it's going to be too difficult to get the food I've been eating. If I could still just eat, junk food. Then I certainly don't want to go back on food stamps. I had food stamps for many years. So the nutrition, most of the nutritious food I got was from food stamps. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I've avoided them so far. So I got no plans to have them on my tail, that's for sure. But I'm not filing. I'm just not. I haven't filed. I'm not going to file. They can kiss my ass. It's like we talk about these beliefs and, the rights and privileges and freedoms and all this, the rights and freedoms. Spiritually, I just don't think they can force me to file an income tax return. Now, I think they can absolutely compel me to pay them whatever fiat they've decided is theirs, which I paid in the past. I've never heard a word out of them, and I think that's because I've never tried to avoid giving them their money. And in fact, I'm probably owed money in the form of refunds, which I don't really give a fuck about personally. I'd rather and I never got any of the stimulus money because that's all based on that's all based on filing a return. But I didn't get any of the stimulus money. Which I'd rather not have it anyway. I don't know. Good question, Woody. No idea. I used to like ephedrine though, just when you could get straight ephedrine in this country, straight ephedrine tablets. And I'm sure some people are going to try to say that you still can. Maybe one still can. I'm saying when one could easily obtain it, just pressed ephedrine tablets. As long as a person did not abuse them, I found that to be. There was times, especially back in my weightlifting days, there was times when I took ephedrine. Once I got into the pseudo and all that, I was done with it. Just the straight up ephedrine. I always responded well to it. But part of that was that I did not abuse it. And I'm just not. Overall, I'm not really drawn to stimulants anyway. That's probably not meth, obviously, but basically at the ephedrine level, I'm probably the type that could just take it in moderation. Versus most of my other substance taking ends up being, I tend to go way overboard with it. Well, and Scott, I don't know what you mean by that. And I'm not trying to be a dick, but I don't know what you mean by that. And I've yet to run across anybody who can break that statement down into its most basic components. I notice there's a lot of confusion around these topics. Well, yeah, that's a good point, Gary Baxter. Yeah. What I would say is, until a person, sits with a concept and really examines it for themselves, they're not, it's just entertainment. Me talking is just mainly entertainment or, just some form of human connection, right? It's not, for somebody to internalize any of these ideas I'm speaking on, I think necessarily the person would have to experience the concepts internally enough to have their own understanding of the concept. So necessarily, I can only really convey these ideas based on my own understanding. And then when I talk about a war with myself, that's such an abstract idea. Who even knows what that means, right? Yeah. Well, but I can understand the concept of a legal fiction, Scott Core. See, that to me, I can understand that, and that, I know information like a corporation is considered a legal person. So like Bank of America has constitutional rights. So I can, if somebody says, okay, the birth certificate and the social security number and the driver's licenses, that all functions as like corporate fictions, in all of these. Like I can understand that, and then that's not me as far as like my humanity. Like I can understand that. But then what do I do with those ideas? I think that's where the confusion comes in. Oh, it's like, okay, yes, but what's next beyond that? Because just running around saying that information to government officials doesn't lead anywhere. Well, it doesn't lead anywhere positive or productive. So what I see is a lot of confusion where people they learn certain intellectual information, but then they mistakenly seem to believe that now they can just go and try to drive around without a driver's license and not register their automobile and not pay income tax. And then when they get called out on it by the officials, they can just start saying a bunch of information to the officials, which no, that doesn't work, as we've seen. Well, and then back to Gary Baxter's point about the inner dialogue, and here's what I would say to that. while I think this is an accurate statement, what I would say is that's their problem. Uh, and now I'm back to the throwing down the gauntlet. You know, is a person willing to just say, fuck it, this is my goal, is some level of personal development, some level of spiritual development, some level of self-mastery. And to me, the throwing down the gauntlet is I will do whatever I have to do to achieve those goals. And that ties in with what I was talking about. Listening to that documentary reminded me that I have those, that I've been tapped into those aspects of myself. And not that I've necessarily gotten away from them. I think that, in the past I was socialized in a environment where it was much more, for me to express myself overtly in those ways was much more acceptable than it is now. So I think in order to fit in or go along to some extent, it's not that I haven't changed. It's that I've not exhibited those traits to the outside world nearly as strongly as I did in the past. And I'm getting older. So just necessarily, I'm not as inclined, because some of that's a young man's game in some ways. Just this take the bull by the horns, brute force aggression, right? But then Louis Simmons, the person who started this gym, like he was still that way, like into his 60s, where somebody would challenge him, throw down the gauntlet, and he would. So at a certain point, he had basically destroyed his body with all this powerlifting, and then somebody said to him, well, you'll never do this certain type of lift again, this heavy weightlifting. So of course, when the person challenged him in that way, of course he had to show them that, of course he had to prove them wrong, right? But he's not doing that to prove them wrong. He's doing it to prove something to himself about himself. And see, I'm remembering and I'm realizing, yeah, whatever that is, I believe we all have that within us, whatever that thing is. It's just, I think most people are just not in touch with that. And then society not only does society not reward that, in fact, if I go out here and act based on that, I'm going to be viewed as a weirdo in a lot of ways, because I can remember one of my versions of that was I was working in this machine shop for minimum wage, by the way, living in me and ex-wife number 2, trying to get our lives together financially. And, both of us had jobs. And this was, right around 08, 09, the financial crisis, the economic woes. And people are wondering, well, what's up with all this drug addiction, mental illness, and homelessness? I don't know, man, if we've just forgotten that the banking system and the entire financial system collapsed 15 years ago. It's like we've forgotten that happened, right? And that more or less all the banks went belly up, like that really happened. It's like we've just forgotten about this. And so I don't know what happened at the machine shop, but eventually I worked my way up to, because at first, this Arkansas mentality, which I do enjoy in a certain type of way. And by the way, we were living in a weekly motel, trying to save up enough money to get an apartment, which we did, right, eventually. But and that was by the way, that was through my own, leadership. Some of these things Paul talks about with a man and a woman together, and then the man being the leader. None of that was her idea, I can assure you, and that was me, battling with myself, and then also, fighting her impulses, and to lead us into what's a very, on the surface, is not that great of an accomplishment. But anyway, so over a period of weeks, starting out as a temporary worker and doing the most dangerous, less desirable job in the place, and then eventually getting into a department where I'm like assembling these metal components or whatever. So I guess production was behind schedule. So me and this other guy, me and a couple other people were working late. We got to do overtime. And so the boss leaves for the day, the supervisor, and he says, he's giving us instructions, And to me, he says, well, just, work on this, assemble these parts, but here's the amount of time and here's the amount of work. And he says, well, you're not going to get finished with all of this, of course. Meaning, well, this is too much work for the allotted time. Well, he didn't realize that he's giving me a challenge. He's throwing down the gauntlet. So, of course, in my mind, I'm immediately like, well, shit, if this is physically possible for me to do this amount of work, now it's like challenge accepted. So I did do all of the work in the allotted time. And my thing is now I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on up here, but looks like maybe an animal got hit. Yeah, somebody hit a deer. Oh, they demolished that motherfucker. Somebody was hauling ass when they hit that thing. But you're not going to be able to eat that roadkill, Lou. So, and I am a prideful person, and I do, I am powered by compliments to some extent. So I guess I was pretty, I guess I was right around 30. So I guess I was thinking I was going to get some kind of praise when the guy, when the boss came in, the supervisor came in the morning. He just thought I was weird. It's like, what's wrong with this guy, that he would do this? And, ultimately I wasn't doing it for him anyway, and I didn't give a fuck about the company. I mean, who cares? And, I was just doing that for myself. And to me, that's what that is that throwing down the gauntlet. That's me, winning the battle with myself to prove something to myself. And in the modern world, in 2023, not only am I not going to be praised for that, if other people even notice, they're probably going to think it's weird that I'm, having these competitions with myself and achieving, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. My path is progress. I'm here, I think I would probably entirely lose interest in even being here, if I wasn't able to continue to grow and evolve and struggle to adapt and overcome and work towards whatever my goals happen to be, which, as I talked about, that is success. If you look at the meaning of the word success, what I just described, that is success. Now, again, we're in America, and in America, we only measure in money. So ultimately, I will never receive any sort of recognition for an accomplishment unless it can be measured in money. That's just how it is, which is fine. What's up, Robin? Yeah, I was asleep. Robin emailed me about Ted's passing. But yeah, I would have known that before you, Robin, except I was asleep. But yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the broadcast. Certainly. Cool, yeah, I'd like to see that. Maybe you emailed that to me and I wasn't awake enough. If there was an attachment to that email, I might have missed it. But I'll go back and check it out. Well, this is the collapse, though. I think that's, when I observe, and I'm not picking on Gary, this is just my opinion here. So you take it or leave it. If I ain't talking to you, I ain't talking to you, right? But it's either for you. This is either for you or it's not for you. But this is the collapse. I think that's. I've noticed in a lot of the so-called truthers in their psychology, a lot of people can face how bad things are, but only if it's pushed off into the future. Like, oh, there's gonna be a collapse. Oh, things are gonna get bad. It's like, no. This is the collapse. Society has collapsed. You're living in a collapse. This is the collapse. But yeah, the collapse will further collapse certainly. It's a prolonged, protracted collapse, but with a high standard of living, right? And with a you know uh, a relative affluence and with cheap goods, all of the, and I talk about how, one of the reasons I don't romanticize the 80s and the 90s, really we're talking about like 85 to 95, really, you know, which in many ways was a wonderful time in various aspects culturally, but then the access to cheap goods wasn't there yet, right? So, whereas today I can just work a job as a truck driver, as long as I don't go crazy with debt and living expenses, I can go on Amazon.com and more or less order whatever the fuck I want. I couldn't afford to buy a computer in 1987. Like it just wasn't possible. And I can even remember by 93, I think in 94 or 95, I bought my first computer, which was, so at the time, like the Pentiums were just coming out, like a Pentium 75, like a Packard Bell Pentium 75, somebody might get like store credit and get like a Packard Bell or an E-Machines for like $1,500. Well, I think I saved up enough cash that in like 94 or 95, I bought like literally a 286 computer. So you had 286, 386, 486, and then the Pentium was like, the next version of the 486, right? The x86 architecture. And then I remember like I had a Montgomery Ward or Sears store credit card and like bought like a 14.4 external modem on credit that I never paid back. While I was working full time, for $8 an hour. But meanwhile, I could work 40 hours a week, and I had a roommate and had a nice apartment, had a car. I could afford to put gas in the car. I could pay my car insurance, and I could split the rent and utilities with somebody else, and had enough money to, feed myself. Whereas, is that a thing? Can somebody just go work, a regular retail job 40 hours a week, and have a roommate and put gas in their car? Didn't have a car payment, but had a paid for car, but still, so yeah, we have all these cheap goods. And yeah, it's possible to make some money if somebody's willing to hustle, but it's things have changed quite a bit economically in certain ways. I would assert. So I don't want to go back to the 80s, 85 to 95, but yeah, in many ways, musically it was great. Culture. Of course, I didn't understand just how fake things were. Yeah, sports were great because I didn't realize that sports were fake. So I was a big sports fan back then. The pre-internet era, certainly. Although I realized the internet was around. Of course, I was what ages was I? That was 85 to 95 was like, I don't know, I was ages 11 to 21, I guess. So I don't think that's a coincidence that I think that was a great time. Monkey Ward. Oh, Montgomery Ward, yeah. Well, that was, being from Arkansas and growing up at a time warp in Fayetteville, Arkansas in 1994, we still had a Montgomery Ward, and it was probably one of the last ones in the country, I would imagine. And Fayetteville was such a backwards, sleepy town at the time that because if you've ever heard anything about Northwest Arkansas, that's where Walmart is headquartered, and it's been a booming area of the country ever since, and it's got a great jobs market. And Fayetteville's it ends up somehow it'll get on the one of these lists of like the best small city in the country or whatever, which is not that, but it's just got relatively low crime and it's got really high, the job market's really good. It's relatively affordable. Back then, it was so backwards that when I went to college, we would drive to Fort Smith, Arkansas to go to Best Buy, which is the idea of somebody leaving Fayetteville, Arkansas to go to Fort Smith for shopping. Like today, that would just seem ludicrous. But I can remember driving, me and my friend from the guy I met when I was a freshman in college, we used to drive up to Bentonville just for fun. And once you got out of Springdale, there's just nothing. Like there's just nothing between Springdale and Bentonville. And I can remember Bentonville did not have a single multi-lane road. So, Arkansas, I'm from a very backwards, rural, podunk state. Okay, Z Live. Yeah, go check Z out. Not really trying to compete with Z. So, it's really the only time I'm able to get my ideas out to the people. Eventually, I might just start doing pre-recording these and just do them as a premiere in the afternoons or the evenings, maybe. Although StreamYard doesn't really do that, it would still be as a live. Instead of doing it as a premiere, StreamYard does it as a live stream. But then, when I tried to do that in the past, too many people were confused, thinking it was a live stream. It caused too much confusion. Well, and yeah, and I talked about this yesterday, Slow Boy, about there's a lot of advantages to those areas. What I would say is, for a person who, as long as somebody like me, does evolve their consciousness and transcend, the psychological limitations of that style of living, right? Then I tend to agree with what you're saying. It's just, for me, I know so many people, being from Arkansas, I know so many people that they never move beyond those levels of consciousness. But the same for the city folk. It's just a different version, right? So, but yeah, there's a lot of built-in advantages to culturally being able to live in places like that. What's up, Mr. Me? Good to see you. And as we've seen, with just how with the, the decay of all of the cities now, it's a great advantage to be able to live in an area like Arkansas. It's, until the fake pandemic, I would never consider just, oh, I'm going to go live in Arkansas, as a person who's, expanded their horizons. Now it's like, well, fuck yeah. It becomes very attractive to live in some of those areas that seem very, on the surface, seem really backwards, and there's not a lot of appeal in a lot of those areas. Yep, that's right. Yeah, yeah. The end of the character known as Ted Kaczynski. Yeah, we talked about it earlier, Michael James. course, the Unabomber is the Unabomber sketch anyway is a theme of the channel for sure. Oh man. Woo! What's up, Machine Lives? Good to see you. Yeah, man. There you go. Rode a bull cart into the city. That's right. Well, and I think this is, you know, the when you have some people in the so-called truth community like romanticizing these notions of, you know, organic farming and homesteading and all of this, but you know, then the realities of actually living that way, when we look at somebody like Razvan, you know, who grew up as a peasant, and he's the one that uses that terminology. You know, it's not a pejorative. He grew up, you know, working the land, and his parents worked the land. And to realize that, you know, Razvan is a person who understands intellectually, you know, just how much of a nightmare and just how dystopian, you know, city life and modern life is, but the fact that he still chooses that over, you know, and he's talked about that when the shit really hits the fan, since he grew up as a peasant, he'll just go back to working in the land. And my thing is like, okay, yeah, but why not just go ahead and do that now? Which on some level he's acknowledging, yeah, that shit sucks, right? Yeah, pushing, you know, riding a bull cart to the city or whatever, you know, that this people can make fun of cities all they want. I mean, there are some inherent advantages and superiorities to the city versus, you know, working the land all of one's life as a peasant. You know, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Yeah, good to see you, man. Right back to you. Right back at you. I'm not really set up for peace myself, but maybe that's what is at the end of this life. Maybe this life for me is a, you know, a war and a series of battles, and then maybe that's what happens at the end. After the war is the peace. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, Razvan, he's a bit of a challenge. I think, as many of us are. In fact, I've not always gotten along with Razvan, certainly. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but I can work with anybody that can work with me. So, or I can deal with anybody that can deal with me. Oh, what did Croco report? Oh, you're talking about your grandfather? Yeah, shout out to Croco. Did we ever figure out? I guess we never figured. I guess we're just gonna. Most likely, he died of a drug overdose. I guess it's been long enough. I mean, that seems like the most likely outcome. You know, what percentage of the population's on opiates now? It's got to be a high percentage. Oh yeah, HR grew up on a farm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you learn what you don't want to do. Yeah. Yep, that's right. The Unabomber is no more. Oh, Kaczynski, yeah. Yeah, oh, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, that's a good question, man. It's hard to really know. Uh, because I don't even know if that was a real person or not. We talk about these actors on the world stage and all of this. It's confusing. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter ultimately, but I mean, he was born in '46, and assuming he actually lived in a federal supermax, I mean, it's not like he was going to make it. I would say to live as long as he did under those conditions is, he probably maximized, assuming it's real, he probably just about maximized what would be possible. Well, and that's the thing, this idea that there's this feared terrorist trying to, you know, maniacally transform society and, had his so-called manifesto, you know, committed these terrorist acts and all of this over a period of many years, but then you could literally write to a terrorist and like it doesn't even make sense if you think about it. Like, why would that? Why would the general public be allowed to correspond with a domestic terrorist? Seems a little strange. Yeah, I don't know, man. As far as timing can be a interesting thing. Well, and that's the thing, like with the fentanyl, you know, it makes me wonder if in part of that is not because basically it seems like it's more or less it's becoming basically impossible for somebody to actually get black market, to get opiates outside the medical system that are not, tainted with fentanyl. Seems to be basically impossible at this point. So it's like I couldn't imagine. Pretty much have to have somebody around you with Narcan. Not you, but a person who's going to abuse, or even you, not even abuse, a person who's going to try to use street drugs, street opiates. It seems like it would be a necessity to have somebody, another person in the physical vicinity with Narcan, right? But then, as we know, he had this, and I don't know anything about his girlfriend, but you know, drug use and romantic partners seems to go hand in hand. And again, I'm just speculating. It's not really none of my business. I'm more talking generally about just things I've observed, in society in general. I'm a very accepting, tolerant person at the level of what people choose to do. I don't. I've been friends with and known many drug addicts. I don't. To me, it's not even a thing, other than there are certain aspects of it that it's real shit. Like, you know, the chance of accidentally dying is already high with just regular heroin. You start introducing fentanyl or the blues into the mix. What's up, Austin Murphy? Good to see you. Yeah, we're probably about done. I think not that we're taking away from Z's numbers. I don't think. Yep, exactly. It is. I agree. Yep. yeah, definitely. Crocco, he's never really received quite the accolades he probably had earned for his actual, his actual work. I was a big fan. I was back when he was on D Live. I was in pretty much all of his live chats. That was a few years ago now. And I just Odyssey just never worked out for me for whatever reason. D Live, as shitty as it looked, it actually worked at the time anyway. Yeah, I guess I'm about done. I don't know that I ever really verbalized what I thought I was going to be able to cover today, but that's all right. Hope y'all have a good day. Yep, that's right. Rest in power, Davey. Oh, is that? Oh, did you know the guy who you're talking about? The guy that? See, I misread your comment earlier, Machine Live. Because I have read that book, Technological Slavery, so I was aware that some of that came out of the correspondence between a university professor. So you're saying you knew that professor? Is that what you're saying? That's interesting. Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, I just don't have the energy anymore, really, for the to get too complicated, too in the weeds. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've read that book. In fact, I had a copy of that and Anti-Tech Revolution. And they were both in my. I had an old Nissan Versa that ended up. It wasn't worth repairing, and I allowed it to get towed after it broke down. Unfortunately, some of my belongings were in it. That was when I was drinking real heavily too, and had a broken foot. Although actually, no, now that I think about it, I wasn't drinking that heavy because I was having my foot was healing. But either way, yeah, I didn't. Wish I had those. I guess I'll just have to order another copy. That's right. Yeah, indeed. Indeed, Mr. Baxter. Well, appreciate y'all being here, and we'll go check out Zetetic Warrior. He's live, I believe, probably for another couple of hours. And thanks for watching. Bye.